And after the Gazala gallop, we were kind of short of aeroplanes. And so we were moved to Port Said. The aerodrome there was called Gamil, and we re-equipped. They gave us, replaced the Hurricanes, and we went back into the desert again. And our very first op, we were scrambled, 12 of us, after some 109s, and it would have been quite some time since we'd been over that area. We'd been fighting over it, of course, back and forth, and we were on our way across on the other side, and we were between two layers of cloud, and Commander, our ground instructor, director, had warned us that the 109s were close. And as we were flying along, suddenly in front of me, Tom Meek, who was my leader, suddenly streamed smoke, and I whipped around because I thought he'd been shot at. There was nothing there, and I turned back again, and he'd got a glycol leak. Now, under the Hurricane, you've got your radiator, and they used glycol, and obviously something had gone wrong there, and there was this white, bluey white smoke coming out. So I reported it, and the formation leader, Pitt Metlerkamp, told us to Moscow, which was the term, go back home. And he said, cover him. So I covered him, and we broke away, and Tom had to get back to the ground in a hurry, because once you lose your glycol, your engine seizes, and the fan keeps on turning, and invariably the engine catches fire. So Tom went down through the cloud. I was following close behind him. We broke cloud cover, and as he leveled out, I looked around, and there were the 109s. And I just saw one of them pull up his nose at us, and I thought, whoa, we're in trouble now. But he carried on, and he went over the top, and he did a lovely roll off the top away from us. And I said, Tom, speaking in the vernacular, if you don't mind, I said, for Christ's sake, on your back and down, they're the 109s. So he rolled onto his back and went bulleting through the cloud, and I followed him. We leveled off below the cloud. We didn't know where on earth we were. As I say, we've been at Gamil for quite some time. We've been above cloud, and it was our first op back again. So Tom found a nice open bit of desert, and he put down on it very well. And I went off on a square search, firstly to find out where we were, if I could find it, but one bit of desert looks much the same as another. And so I called up Commander and asked for a fix, and he wouldn't give it to me. He acknowledged my call, but he would not give me a fix. So I had no idea where we were. So in sheer desperation, I came back, I lobbed down, and I followed his tracks as far as I could, because a small hole in the desert can be disaster, and pulled up next to him. But I did notice when I was on my way down that there was a fire burning next to the Hurricane, which rather puzzled me. When I got out, I had a look. Now this, I think, was the second time Tom had finished in the desert, so anticipating me there for quite a while, he'd taken the side off the Hurricane, and he got his emergency rations out, and he got them down, and he'd taken his parachute, he'd taken the other side of the Hurricane, and he'd formed a boma of this little lot, and he took his parachute and he pulled it, and he got his bed all nicely laid out, and he got a little fire going under this little lot, and that was what I saw when I came down. And because it was fairly late in the afternoon, and we sat and chatted for a while, because there was no way I could take off at that stage. It was going to be next day. In any case, we didn't know where on earth we were. And so it got dusk, and I went to the aircraft to get my cap. I left it in the aircraft. And as I bent over to pick it up, Tom was behind me. He was powdering his nose quietly. We both heard, "Hello, hello." And I froze, and I said to Tom, out of the corner of my mouth, "Did you say anything?" And he said, "No." So I reached in and pulled out a very pistol of all things. I thought, well, at least I can shoot something at somebody. And I heard a click at the back, and I knew Tom had taken out his .45, which he'd got belted on, and he'd cocked that. And then out of the gloom came Alan Durose. He was in a Tomahawk and had been shot down a couple of miles away, and had seen us coming in, and had sort of got a direction right and started walking. So the three of us were there that night. Next morning, pretty early, I fired up and again called Commander. He acknowledged but would not give me a position. So I thought, well, the best thing is I flew at exactly 180 miles an hour due east, and I timed it, and I hit the Alex Cairo Road, and I noted the time, and I turned left at 180 still and went up until I spotted our camp, so that, noting the time, so that using the time and the speed I could work out roughly where the two bods were. So I arrived back and passed on the glad news. I phoned Commander and tore him off a strip, and he apologized, but he said, look, I'm not allowed to do that because Jerry has captured some of our radio sets and has set up traps. You know, got a bod who could speak English well and set up traps. And he said, we've been bitten that way a couple of times, so we do not pass out that information. So I apologized suitably, which was understandable. And at that stage, there was a Fairy Gordon, which was a biplane, which was carried 3 people. It belonged to 92 Squadron, which was a squadron which had arrived at our aerodrome short time before, and they were going to set up an aerodrome next to ours, and these bods had come out in this aircraft to suss it out. They went to one of the RAF squadrons. They were an RAF squadron, 92. They went to one of the squadrons in the wing, which shall be nameless, and they were back about an hour later and said, look, can we spend the night with you folks? Have you got space? Because he said the morale in that little lot is so badly shot, you know, it shook us. And we said, of course, you know, feel free. And so Flight Lieutenant Morgan was the leader of that bunch. And so they spent the night with us. And the next day, when I got back, they said, look, we'll fly an engineer out, plus a guard to that spot there, and we can bring the pilots back again and leave the engineer then and go out the following day if he can fix the thing. So that's what they did. They flew the O'Connor, Red O'Connor, was the Red Connor. I knew him from gliding days before the war, engineering officer, lovely man. And so he sorted out the aircraft, and then again later when he got it fixed they flew out a pilot and everything. But the thing was that what broke my heart was that having escorted him and then said fare thee well and come back again, I arrived back late, and strangely enough 11 Hurricanes were beating up our camp. Now, Major Lemessurier was very much against any sort of beating up. And these Hurricanes were going just above 10 tight, whoosh! And I thought, no, there's something screwy here. I got out to hear about the Stuka party. They just arrived back from the Stuka party, and to hell with rules. Everybody, and I think he did it as well. On that little lot.
So what did they do, just fly over?
Yes, you know, just over the camp at, as you say, 0 feet,
Yeah.
just to let them know something had happened. And they looked up, and of course they saw the gun ports, which are normally closed with dope fabric, were open, and the flaps were there, and they knew that there'd been a fight.
Yeah.
And instead of coming back in dribs and drabs, they'd come back as a squadron, so they knew something was on. And of course they'd shot down all these Stukas and the 109, and but I missed that.
Yeah.
Whether I'd have been on the first lot, which was there until midday, and the other lot sat around until they only took off, I think, at about 6 o'clock. So it was a very late effort. But the Tom got back okay, but he spent another flop. That's another story where he and I collided, and he was used to landing up in the desert, so what was that?
Okay, now this is a great story.